He had nothing left to live for. Then a crying little girl at a train station changed his destiny forever. Subscribe to Wild Sky Stories' new emotional tales every day. The evening sun painted the dusty town of Willow Creek in shades of orange and gold as the train whistle echoed through the valley. Thomas Hartley stepped off the platform of the westbound locomotive, his worn leather boots hitting the wooden planks with the weight of a man who had traveled too far and seen too much. He had been gone for 3 years. 3 long years working the cattle drives up north, saving every penny he earned to buy back his family's ranch that had been lost to debt after his father passed. Now, at 32 years old, he finally had enough money tucked safely in his saddlebag to reclaim what belonged to his blood. The station was nearly empty. Most folks had already collected their belongings and hurried home to warm suppers and welcoming arms. Thomas had neither waiting for him. His mother had passed while he was away, and the telegram had reached him 2 months too late to say goodbye. He was truly alone in this world now. Thomas adjusted his hat and began walking toward the station office to inquire about a horse he could purchase, when a sound stopped him cold. It was soft at first, barely audible over the hissing steam of the departing train. But as the locomotive pulled away, leaving behind a trail of smoke and memory, the sound grew clearer. Someone was crying. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the shadowed corners of the platform until they landed on a small figure huddled beside a stack of luggage trunks. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old, sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her small shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed too heavy for such a tiny body. Thomas stood frozen for a moment. He had never been particularly good with children. His life had been filled with cattle, hard labor, and the company of rough men who spoke more to their horses than to each other. But something about this child's desperate weeping reached into his chest and squeezed his heart in a way he could not ignore. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. His boots made gentle thuds against the wooden platform as he knelt down a few feet away from her. The little girl looked up, her face streaked with tears that had left clean trails through the dust on her cheeks. She had curly brown hair that had come loose from its ribbons, and the biggest, saddest brown eyes Thomas had ever seen. Thomas removed his hat and held it against his chest. He spoke softly the way he would to a spooked foal. He told her his name was Thomas and asked if she was all right. He asked where her mama and papa were. The little girl's bottom lip trembled violently. She said her name was Lily. She said her mama went to find their tickets because they had lost them. But that was a long time ago, and now Lily did not know where her mama went. She was scared her mama had forgotten her. Thomas felt his heart clench. He assured Lily that mamas do not forget their little girls. He told her they would find her mother together. He asked if she remembered what her mama looked like and what she was wearing. Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. She said her mama had yellow hair like sunshine and wore a blue dress with little white flowers on it. She said her mama was the prettiest lady in the whole world. Thomas could not help but smile at the fierce love in the child's voice. He asked Lily if she would let him help her look. He promised he would stay with her until they found her mother. Lily studied him for a long moment with those ancient eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her years. Finally, she nodded and reached up her small hand. Thomas took it gently, marveling at how tiny and fragile it felt wrapped in his calloused palm. He helped her to her feet and noticed she was clutching a rag doll that had seen better days. Together they walked toward the station office, Lily's hand gripping his with desperate trust. The station master, an elderly man with spectacles perched on his nose, looked up as they entered. Thomas explained the situation, describing the woman Lily had spoken of. The station master's face grew troubled. He said a woman matching that description had indeed come through earlier. She had been in quite a panic, searching for something. He had seen her run toward the general store across the street about an hour ago. Thomas thanked him and led Lily outside. The town was settling into the quiet of early evening, with shop owners beginning to close their doors and light their lamps. They crossed the dusty street together, Lily having to take 3 steps for every one of his. She asked Thomas if he thought her mama was angry with her. She said she had been told to stay put and not move no matter what. But she had gotten scared when it got dark. Thomas assured her that her mama would not be angry. He said her mama would be so relieved and happy to see her that any other feeling would disappear like morning mist. The general store was closed, but through the window, they could see a woman pacing frantically inside, speaking with animated gestures to the shopkeeper. Even through the dusty glass, Thomas could see she had hair the color of summer wheat and wore a blue dress dotted with white flowers. Thomas knocked on the door. The woman's head snapped toward the sound, and when her eyes landed on Lily, her entire face transformed. She let out a cry that was equal parts relief and anguish as she rushed to the door and threw it open. She fell to her knees right there on the wooden boardwalk, gathering Lily into her arms with such ferocity that Thomas had to step back. She was crying now, repeating Lily's name over and over like a prayer, kissing her curly head and holding her as if she might disappear again. Lily was crying too, but these were different tears. She kept saying she was sorry, that she had tried to stay put, but she had gotten so scared. The woman pulled back just enough to cup her daughter's face in her hands. She said Lily had nothing to be sorry for. She said she was the one who should never have left her alone so long. She explained that she had found the tickets, but then could not find her way back. The streets all looked the same, and she had gotten turned around. She had been searching everywhere. Thomas stood quietly, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment, yet unable to look away from the fierce love radiating between mother and daughter. Finally, the woman looked up at him. Her eyes were the same shade of brown as Lily's, rimmed red from crying but shining with gratitude so profound it took his breath away. She asked if he was the one who found Lily. She said she did not know to thank him. She said she had been going out of her mind with worry. Thomas found his voice had abandoned him. Up close, in the soft glow of the street lamp, she was indeed the prettiest woman he had ever seen. But it was not just her features that struck him. It was the strength in her jaw, the fierce protectiveness in her bearing, the way she held her daughter like nothing in this world or the next would ever harm her. He finally managed to say it was nothing. He said Lily had been very brave. He said any decent man would have done the same. The woman rose to her feet, still holding Lily's hand tightly. She introduced herself as Hannah Moore. She said she and Lily were traveling to live with her sister's family. She explained that her husband had passed 2 years ago from fever, and they had finally saved enough to make the journey west. Thomas felt something shift in his chest at her words. A widow, like his mother had been, traveling alone with a young child, trying to build a new life from the ashes of loss. He asked where her sister lived. Hannah said they were headed to the Benton Ranch, about 20 miles north of Willow Creek. She said her sister had married a rancher there years ago. Thomas felt his eyes widen slightly. He said he knew the Benton Ranch well. His own family's land bordered theirs. He was heading that direction himself come morning. Hannah's face brightened with hope that she quickly tried to temper with practical caution. She said that was quite a coincidence. She asked if perhaps they might travel together. She admitted the road still seemed daunting to her, a woman from the city not accustomed to such wild country. Thomas said he would be honored to escort them. He said the roads could be tricky for those unfamiliar with the territory. He would ensure they arrived safely. Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered something in her ear. Hannah smiled, the first real smile Thomas had seen from her, and it transformed her face into something radiant. Hannah said Lily wanted to know if Thomas would join them for supper. The boarding house down the street had rooms and a dining hall. She said it was the least she could offer after what he had done. Thomas knew he should decline. He had planned to sleep in the livery stable to save money. Every penny he had was needed for the ranch. But when Lily looked up at him with those hopeful brown eyes, still clutching her rag doll in her mother's hand, He found the word no had vanished from his vocabulary. The boarding house was warm and smelled of fresh bread and stew. They sat at a small table by the window, and for the first time in 3 years, Thomas did not eat alone. Lily chattered happily about the train ride, about the cow she had seen from the window, about how her mama had promised her a pony once they were settled. Hannah watched her daughter with tired but loving eyes, occasionally meeting Thomas's gaze across the table. Each time their eyes locked, something unspoken passed between them, something fragile and new and terrifying in its possibility. After supper, Lily began to drowse, her head nodding against her mother's shoulder. Hannah excused herself to put the child to bed but paused at the bottom of the stairs. She said she would understand if Thomas had changed his mind about escorting them. She said she knew it was an imposition. She said he surely had important business of his own to attend to. Thomas stood and walked to where she waited. He said nothing in his life had ever been more important than seeing them safely home. He said he would meet them at dawn with horses and provisions. He said she should rest well because the journey would be long. Hannah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She thanked him again, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she carried her sleeping daughter up the stairs, leaving Thomas alone with the echo of her gratitude and the warmth it kindled in his heart. The next morning came bright and clear. Thomas had purchased 2 gentle mares from the livery and loaded them with supplies. When Hannah and Lily emerged from the boarding house, Lily ran to him with the uninhibited joy of childhood, hugging his legs and exclaiming over the horses. The journey north took 2 days. They stopped at a small creek to rest and water the horses. Lily picked wildflowers and made a crown for her mother. Thomas taught her how to skip stones across the water. Hannah watched them from beneath the shade of an old oak tree, her eyes soft with something Thomas dared not name. That night they camped beneath a canopy of stars more vast and beautiful than anything Hannah had ever seen. She admitted she had grown up in a city back east, where buildings blocked the sky and noise never ceased. She said this land felt like a dream, wild and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Thomas told her about his childhood on these plains. He told her about riding alongside his father, learning the land and the sky and the way the seasons turned. He told her about losing the ranch and working 3 years to earn it back. He told her about his mother passing and the telegram that came too late. Hannah listened without interruption. When he finished, she reached across the firelight and placed her hand over his. She said she was sorry for his losses. She said grief had a way of hollowing a person out from the inside. She said she understood because losing her husband had nearly broken her. But Lily had given her a reason to keep going. Lily had been her anchor to this world when everything else had fallen away. Thomas turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. He said he had never had an anchor. He said he had been drifting for so long he had forgotten what it felt like to be tethered to anything or anyone. Hannah squeezed his hand. She said maybe he did not have to drift anymore. She said maybe some people were meant to find each other along the way. They sat in silence after that, hands intertwined, watching the fire burn low while Lily slept peacefully nearby, her rag doll clutched to her chest. The next afternoon, they crested a hill and saw the Benton Ranch spread out below them. But before they descended, Thomas led them on a slight detour. He wanted to show them something. They stopped at a small homestead that had fallen into disrepair. The fence posts leaned at odd angles, and the house needed a new roof. But the land stretched out in every direction, rolling grassland dotted with wildflowers and crossed by a clear running stream. Thomas dismounted and helped Hannah and Lily down from their horses. He said this was his family's land. This was what he had come home to reclaim. He admitted it did not look like much now, but with work and time it could be something beautiful again. Lily immediately began running through the tall grass, arms spread wide like she was trying to embrace the whole meadow. Her laughter rang out like music across the open plain. Hannah stood beside Thomas, her shoulder brushing against his arm. She said it was beautiful. She said she could imagine what it would become. She said she could see it clearly, The house restored, the fences mended, cattle grazing in the distance, and a garden growing by the kitchen door. Thomas turned to look at her. He said he had been alone a long time. He said he had thought that was how his story would end. Just him and this land and the memories of everyone he had lost. But then he had stepped off a train and found a crying little girl. And everything he thought he knew about his future had shifted. Hannah met his gaze. She said she had thought her story was over too. She said she had thought she would spend the rest of her days as half a person, going through the motions of living but never truly feeling alive. But then a stranger with kind eyes had knelt down beside her daughter and offered help without asking anything in return. Thomas reached up and gently tucked a strand of golden hair behind her ear. He said he was not asking for anything now either. He said he knew they had only just met. He said he knew there was still so much they did not know about each other. But he asked if she might consider staying close. He asked if she might consider giving him a chance to show her who he truly was. Hannah smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise over the mountains. She said she was not going anywhere. She said her sister's ranch was just over the Ridge. She said she suspected there would be many opportunities for visiting. Lily came running back, breathless and grinning, her arms full of wildflowers. She thrust them toward Thomas and declared they were for him because he had helped them find their way home. Thomas knelt down and accepted the flowers with the same reverence he might have given to gold. He said thank you. He said they were the most beautiful flowers he had ever received. Lily beamed and then looked between Thomas and her mother with the uncanny perception of childhood. She asked if Thomas was going to be their friend now. She asked if she could come back and visit the meadow again. Hannah and Thomas exchanged a glance filled with promise and hope and the tender beginnings of something that might one day become love. Thomas said Lily could visit any time she wanted. He said there was plenty of room in this meadow for wildflowers and laughter and little girls with rag dolls. He said this land had been lonely for too long, and it would be grateful for the company. They delivered Hannah and Lily safely to the Benton Ranch as evening fell. Hannah's sister came running out of the farmhouse, sweeping her into an embrace that spoke of years of separation finally ended. There were tears and laughter and introductions all around. When Thomas turned to leave, Lily grabbed his hand and made him promise to come back soon. Hannah walked him to his horse, standing close enough that he could smell the wildflowers still caught in her hair. She said she would never forget what he had done for them. She said she believed some meetings were not accidents. She said perhaps he had found Lily at that train station, because fate had decided their paths were meant to intertwine. Thomas mounted his horse but lingered, looking down at her in the golden light of sunset. He said he would return in a week to check on them. He said by then he hoped to have the roof repaired on his house. He said perhaps she might like to see the progress. Hannah said she would like that very much. She said she would count the days. Thomas rode toward his land with a heart lighter than it had been in years. The house was dilapidated, and the work ahead would be hard. But for the first time since he could remember, he was not dreading the labor or the loneliness. He was looking forward to tomorrow. He was looking forward to a week from now when he would ride over the ridge and see Hannah smile again. He was looking forward to watching Lily run through his meadow, filling the empty spaces with her laughter. As the stars emerged overhead, Thomas Hartley realized that on his way home, he had found something he never knew he was looking for. In a crying little girl at a train station and her sunshine-haired mother, he had found the family he thought he would never have. And as the lights of the Benton Ranch twinkled in the distance behind him, he smiled and whispered a prayer of thanks to whatever force had guided his boots to that platform at precisely the right moment.